Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today. I'm Chad Swan-Badgerow. I'm the artistic director for Peppermint Creek Theatre Company here in Lansing, Michigan. And I am so pleased and excited and honored to have Lisa Kron with us today, who is an actress and playwright who was born in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and grew up here in Lansing. Her mom, interesting fact, started the West Side Neighborhood Association. And Lisa graduated from Everett High School as valedictorian. I thought that was fantastic.
One of four.
104. Hey, I think you own that. I think you own it. I was one of 5 Charlie Browns in 5th grade, and I still just say and most notably for our discussion today, Lisa wrote the lyrics in the book to the musical Fun Home, which won the Tony Award for Best Original Score, Best Book of a Musical, and Best Musical, and which just closed here at Peppermint Creek. So Lisa, thank you so much for being here and just chatting with me today.
I am delighted to be here, and I am so delighted that Peppermint Creek produced Fun Home.
We are too, you know, and our mission at Peppermint Creek is to address current issues and create dialogue, and Fun Home certainly does that in so many ways. And so it felt not only so exciting to be producing a play by someone that is local here in Lansing, that happens so infrequently, but also a show that just so closely aligns with our mission, and that was really exciting. Lisa, for you, like, what would you say was like the biggest, I know it's been a few years now, right, since you originally wrote the show or was involved in it. What was sort of the biggest surprise for you in creating Fun Home?
Oh, the biggest surprise. You know, I guess, boy, I don't know, because it played out over such a long period of time. You know, it takes a long time to write a musical. This one, you know, I had the most just wonderful, deep, rich collaboration with Janine Tesori on it. And oh, someone's coming to visit. Let me show.
Hi, puppy.
It's Albert.
Oh, I hope my dog doesn't hear that. That's hi, Albert.
You know, it was an enormously rewarding but very difficult adaptation. You know, changing Alison Bechdel's graphic novel to a musical. You know, it has the things that happen, you know, it doesn't necessarily feel this way to the audience, but it's very tricky in terms of, I mean, if you read Alison Bechdel's book, which if you haven't, for anyone out there who hasn't, I recommend that you do. It's a book that, it's the kind of book that, you know, people read it and then they buy it for everybody in their family. You know, it was published in, I think, 2004, 2005, something like that. It's still in print. You know, it's just a wonderful, and it picks you up and it pulls you through this family story, and it's very engaging. So it feels like it's a straightforward narrative, but it in no way is a straightforward narrative. It's actually a very circular personal essay. And so to figure out what the dramatic story was, who the characters are, what happened, you know, it's very vivid, you know, it's a graphic novel. The drawings are all, I'm sure you spent a lot of time with it working on the show. The drawings are very vivid. They're so rich, but there actually is nothing, there are no characters in it. Actually, there are no scenes, and there's no dramatic narrative in it. So that had to be constructed, and it's a memory play. Those are tricky. And so, you know, it didn't work for a long time. And actually we were told again and again and again that we needed to cut the character of adult Allison. And I would say, I understand that character isn't working now. I would challenge any of you to show me how this story works without that character. Because that's actually what's happening in it. You know, it's an adult looking back with the received narrative of, this sounds so dry. And, you know, the trick is to make a musical that wasn't dry, but actually, you know, it's somebody who, you know, nothing happens in her childhood in dramatic terms. her father's in the closet, and they live that way.
Yeah.
And she doesn't know it, and that's how they live. Then dramatically, she goes to college, and a lot of things happen. She comes out. She tells her parents. Her mother reveals to her that her father's gay, and then her father kills himself. All of those are forward-moving. And a dramatic event is that somebody does something that changes the world, that has a that transforms something. And then 20 years go by and nothing happens.
Right.
And she starts to tell his story. And in doing that, she has to then go back to her childhood and take all of those received narratives and reinterpret them based on this information that she got 20 years ago, which was that he's gay. So what's happening in the thing is that we're walking through with her as she looks at those stories and is like, oh. So it's a very weird structure, or a very weird, unusual approach to, I would say, a very traditional dramatic structure. And it really took us a long time. And I think, our timing in terms of when it, how it moved from the public to Broadway was very fortuitous in terms of where the cultural sort of scaffolding of knowledge and image and understanding about gay people, our presence in the general cultural imagination, I think, had reached a point where Fun Home could be received in the direct way that it was. It was very lucky for us.
So I'm intrigued about sort of what it seems like your past career was like as a playwright and actress, and never having worked on a musical. Is that right? Before Fun Home, and what was the sort of carrot or the piece of that process that you were drawn to? Because I definitely hear you saying about how a musical was so hard, writing a musical and long. So what was it that really made you want to stick with it and stay with that process?
Well, one thing is, when people ask me sort of advice about musicals, I say, well, my advice is to write it with Jeanine Tesori.
Okay.
I mean, she is just a true master. Probably not the word I want to use now. She has incredible knowledge and understanding of the form. And so, the book was brought to me with the idea that it could become a musical. And, I was in musicals. I love musicals. I think they are, one of the greatest, certainly American art forms. When people say, I don't know how, people say a lot because they're just like, I hate musicals. And I'm like, you know what? Nobody hates a musical.
Right.
We all love musicals so much that what happens is we feel betrayed when they're bad. But if you ask the person who's like, I hate musicals, like, well, what brought you to the theater? Oh, it was, Bye Bye Birdie in high school. Like, right, exactly. They do a thing that nothing else can do. And I've been on the Dramatist Guild Council for some time now, and one of the perks of being on the Dramatist Guild Council is that you become a Tony voter. And when I was first a Tony voter, I was like, well, this is amazing. I get to see all the Broadway shows, and the musicals, even if they're bad, they'll be great because they're singing and dancing. And pretty quickly, it became clear to me, and this was like right around the time I started working on Fun Home, it became clear to me that actually musicals were much harder to pull off than plays. There's so much more elasticity in a play. Musicals, and as we were working on Fun Home, Jeanine and I talked to George Wolfe, and he said to us, a musical has to have one clear primal driver. And if you find that primal driver, you can be as complicated as you want. And the audience doesn't even need to be able to articulate it, but it has to be there. And but if you don't have that, and that needs to drive every scene. But if you don't have
Mhm.
that, then the whole thing will just turn to mush.
Mhm.
And that is really true. And it took us a long time. But one of the first things that I wrote before I knew what I was doing, I mean, I would say I still don't really know what I'm doing. Musicals are really hard, but one of the first things that I wrote was, what ended up being the opening lines of the musical, Daddy, Hey Daddy, Come Here, I Need You. The primal need of a child to connect, not just in terms of being seen and being loved, those things, but also physically be picked up by her, the primal need of a child for a parent
Mhm.
is the driver of this musical. And
Mhm.
she never gets it. And she is reaching for it through the entire musical. And that is a universal, deeply felt driver. So, that's the engine underneath Fun Home. But yeah, I think but when I was first given the material, the fact is I didn't know anything about it. And so I had a feeling like it could be a musical, and I could have been wrong.
Mhm.
But I think in retrospect, what I felt, and I think this is right, is that musicals express human yearning at the deepest level. And
Mhm.
Fun Home is a book that aches with yearning.
Mhm.
And I think in terms of an adaptation, I've really learned this from Janine. The best adaptations, and musicals are almost always adaptations. They're almost never original, which is quite interesting about them. But almost always when they work, it's because there is a yearning in the material that music can express
Mhm.
in a way nothing else can. And that's certainly true of Fun Home.
Yeah, that's so well said. And I'm also thinking of Janine's musical Caroline or Change, which we've produced at Peppermint Creek as well. That is also feels that same way. That word yearning exists so much in that as well. Given how the high praise you've given of Janine as a partner, is there someone else in your life or in the world that you are excited about maybe partnering with on a show in the future or on something theatrical?
There's oh my goodness. There's lots of people. I mean, I'm part of a collaborative theater company, the Five Lesbian Brothers.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, I just think collaboration is there's a good collaboration. There's nothing like it. I'm actually working on a film right now I'm working with a filmmaker um, who's making a film about Susan Sontag. And she's a very interesting filmmaker. Her name is Kirsten Johnson, and she made a wonderful documentary that I would recommend to people to watch called, I mean, she's made a couple of them, but one that's on Netflix is called Dick Johnson is Dead.
Okay.
I don't know if you've seen it. It's not like anything you've ever seen, and it is extraordinary.
Right.
She has another documentary called Camera Person. She's a really, really, really interesting person. I think the best collaborators are people who, I don't know, I think all you need to share is kind of a sense of, you need to have a sort of matched sense of rigor
Mm.
and a kind of matched sense of aesthetic or narrative values in the end.
Mhm.
And then your differences can be incredibly productive and inspiring. And yeah,
And get you
I
through
love
those
collaboration.
moments when they tell you you should cut adult Allison, right?
Well, yes, yeah.
Are you what has so you sort of talked about having the show you're working on, the movie you're working on now, is what has maybe more broadly inspired you lately artistically? Anything else?
Um, Yeah. Oh, I'm so terrible in a pinch like this. Uh, I I mean, there's a lot of TV that I'm watching that I'm really loving. There's so much really great TV.
Yeah, like what?
Oh God, see, I knew when I said that you were
That's all right.
trying to think of the most interesting things. Um,
Or trashy. They can be trashy too if you're
Trashy, right. I loved Hacks. I feel like I loved Hacks. I'm crazy about Gentleman Jack.
okay.
That's like, what? How did that happen?
Yeah.
Um, uh, there's a oh God, now I'm not gonna be able to remember the name of anything. Um, I'm trying to, oh, this is so embarrassing. Uh, I liked Life and Beth. I mean, I think this isn't my criteria, but I think there didn't used to be any shows that had that had uh f- uh women or non-white creators. There were so
Mhm,
few of them. And
mhm,
I think that there is there's just a, a richness to um the to so much work that we're seeing now, just
mhm.
like uh richness of humor and perspective and just texture of locations and stories, and um you know it's really uh really great. And that's happening uh in some places in the theater as well. I mean, the great Dee Dee O'Connell just won a Tony for the play
Mhm.
Dana H. Dee Dee
Yes.
O'Connell, one of the great, she was in my play In the Wake. She's one of the greatest actresses uh
I was thinking about
working,
that. Yeah.
so amazing. We saw uh Liliana Blaine Cruz's production of Skin of Our Teeth, which is such a difficult play, and I think Liliana has just an I just am so interested in the way that she directs and her
Mhm.
visual world and what she's interested in. At the New York Theater Workshop, there's a play right now called Dreaming Zenzile that stars this extraordinary jazz vocalist and now theater maker, Somi Kakoma. That is, I saw a workshop of it at Sundance. Um, Somi is literally world famous jazz singer, and she channels Miriam Makeba in this
Mhm.
extraordinary way. And I don't know, there's a lot out there.
Can I also just give a shout? I was just in New York a few weeks ago and saw Islander. I want to give a shout out to that. It was two women, and it was sort of an Irish almost folk tale, but they would loop their own lyrics while they were on stage, and there was almost
Wow.
nothing on stage. And it was the storytelling though was so inspiring, uh, and it made me excited about how a story can be engaging even when there's so little like tech happening around it. So that was
Oh
beautiful too.
yes.
So these are my favorite types of conversations, the ones about just like, what are you loving? What you see that was surprising? I love
Yeah.
all of that. Thinking about your work, Lisa, in the past, what shows have you created that have, like turned out the closest to what you imagined in your head when you started, or the most different? I don't know, whichever one is easier for you to answer, I guess.
I mean, none of them. I don't have a show in my head when I start.
Okay.
I have some sort of idea of something that feels like it has dramatic heat to it, that has some sort of frisson to it, that has um, some kind of capacity to open out into something else.
Hmm.
And I don't know really anything about it. I think if I could picture the show before I wrote it, I wouldn't need to write it.
Hmm. Mhm. Okay.
I think there are questions and problems to be entered into. Um, and inevitably I mean, I just ran into somebody the other day, a very new writer, and they were and I have a deep affection for this person, and they were saying to me, you know, it just the first draft came out perfect, and I was like, God bless you. That seems highly unlikely to me,
Right.
but okay. I hope that's true.
Good job.
Sometimes, you know, maybe it's true. I mean, Edward Albee apparently like worked out his entire plays in his head,
Mm-hmm.
and then he wrote them down.
Mm-hmm.
I think people work in different ways, but for me, I think I have, and truthfully, my process is just grueling, and it makes me sort of hesitate to enter into a process, because I know that it's gonna grind me to dust, you know, just sort of, yeah, it's just very, very iterative. And yeah, just
Does that make you
figuring.
want to act more than write?
I mean, I do like to, it's nice to go back and forth, you know. I mean, the problem, you know, I had a Hebrew school teacher years ago who used to say, if you're around the Jews long enough, you want to be around the Goyim, and then you're around the Goyim enough and you want to be back with the Jews. You know, I feel like that's how I feel about acting and writing. You know, I think there's something so great about only having to do one thing. You know, when you're acting, you don't have to worry about the whole play. You don't have to worry about any of it. You can just do your thing.
Right.
And the flip side of it is, then you have to do that thing regardless of how you feel about it, what you think the picture is. So it's, but you know, going back and forth is, it's just, I mean, I would say, you know, when Fun Home was at the Public, I was in a production of this amazing production of Good Person of Szechuan that Lear de Bessonet, who just directed this production of Into the Woods, was at City Center, about to go to Broadway.
Yeah.
She's just extraordinary director and visionary, and she did this production of Good Person of Szechuan, which is really one of my, I mean, I fell in love with that play working on it. I mean, truthfully, what happened was she was doing a reading of it, and she called me and she said, "Do you want to be in this?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm not sure I have time. Let me get back to you," because I hadn't read it and I was embarrassed to say it. So I was like, "Let me check my calendar. I'll get back to you." And I read the play and I was like, in the beginning, I was like, "What is up with this play?" And I got to the end of it and I was like, "This might be the greatest play I've ever read, and I need to be around this play." And then she just did this production. I mean, again, because I think I know, I mean, this is the story of my life. I've got a lot of judgments, and then I'm almost always ultimately delighted when I find out I didn't know anything. You know, I you know, my head was up my ass. I didn't know anything about it. So, you know, as they were doing this production, I was like, this is, I don't get any of this. I don't know what they're doing here. And then I remember we walked into the theater. It was the first production of Lamont. We walked into the theater and looked at the set, and all of a sudden I felt, I understood. I felt like it came into focus what they were doing. And I called my partner, Madeline, and I was like, "I think this might be extraordinary." And it was, I mean, people, so many theater people came and they were like, "I understand Brecht now. I understand how this worked." It was so alive and funny, and then heart-wrenching. Anyway, I love that play. We did it at Mama. Then it had another run at the Public, and the run at the Public happened at the same time as Fun Home was happening in another theater at the Public. And that was one of the great experiences of my life. In the dressing rooms in the Public, there are monitors and you can turn them to different theaters, I realized. So when I wasn't on stage in Good Person, I would go in the bathroom so nobody else would hear it. I would turn the bathroom to Fun Home so I could listen to Fun Home. Then after a few nights, I realized I was hearing the same 10 minutes of Fun Home.
Right.
But then I would go into the lot. They both let out at the same time, and I would go into the lobby, and people would say, "Oh, you know, I loved the show." And in the first day, I was like, "Which show?" And then people would look at me like, "What's your problem? You know what?"
Yeah.
What is that? Right. And then I was like, "Oh, I can't ask that question." But sometimes I literally would have a whole conversation and not know which show they were talking about. But that was really, that was a highlight of my theatrical life, I have to say.
What an amazing dichotomy to be doing a show in a show and then to be next to a show you also created. That.
Yeah, and to have that show, I mean, every night of Good Person, I would hear something more about that script. I feel like I learned so much being inside of that play. It was a real gift to be able to be inside of that incredible play.
Can you talk a little bit about what it feels like to create a show like Fun Home that is produced at such a professional, a high visible level like Broadway, and to then sort of release it to the rest of the world to perform?
I think it's really great. I feel like we had the great experience of making exactly the production we wanted to make. And then it was very well received, even better. That is, I mean, that's the dream, right? To be able to manifest your vision fully. And so we did it, that happened. And then you release it. And I think all kinds of things happen. All kinds of things are made of it, and sometimes those things, what's communicated can feel like it's antithetical to your intentions, but I think that's okay. I think to a surprising amount, plays speak through all kinds of productions, and sometimes they don't. And any play is affected by its audience. The narrative is written ultimately in this imaginative space between audience and the stage, and it changes from night to night. Actually, it changes from city to city. I mean, I have had the experience both being on stage in my own plays and then watching play. I've seen plays. I've gone to see a production of the exact same production of a play in LA and in New York, and seen that it actually was a completely different experience. Margaret Gomez, who's an incredible comedian, theater maker, performer, she did a show called, I think it was called Jaywalker, that was a monologue about a lot of things. But one of the things that it talked about was it being a New Yorker who moved to LA. It was like a motif throughout the show that was about other things, and dealing with trying to cross the street in LA and waiting for the traffic lights. When I saw it in LA, I think it was, when I saw it in LA, it was it just was incredibly successful. And then I saw it in New York and I was like, oh, the relationship to these stories is so different. The assumptions there was something about the way, who you were in relationship to making fun of this thing about LA that was funny in California in a way that it didn't read in New York. It's exact same material, but the relationships are different. I mean, a couple of times we did student matinee performances of my play Well, and it didn't, in the beginning, as it started, I was like, oh, this doesn't make a blind bit of sense, because this play I'm doing direct audience address, and it is presuming that the people I'm talking to are adults looking back on their childhood. These are young people. It's already, the conceit absolutely doesn't work, because I'm not actually talking to them. But then another thing happened, which was this, there are these scenes where I'm like, where this, sort of character of a girl from my childhood comes in and she beats me up. And in those scenes where there were these kids, those scenes were on fire in a completely different way. It pulled the play as a whole out of whack, but, very interesting things happened. Those things, not like a movie where you might see one thing or another. The movie is still the movie. The play actually is changed depending on those factors, depending on, frankly, all kinds of things, like what's the shape of the theater. It makes a difference if you're sitting in a audience looking up at a proscenium, or if you're in a room looking down on the floor, in a black box. Those physical relationships make a difference. All of it makes a difference.
Yeah, and that was obviously a loaded question, given that, we produced your show in Lansing and had a good handful of audience members that would come or order tickets and tell us, oh, we know Lisa's parents, we live next door to them, or we went to Lisa and with Lisa to school. And so they were bringing their own sort of narrative that was separate from the show, aside from just a lot of, patrons who had their own coming out story, for example, and how that resonated with them, certainly. So yeah, I can imagine that it's going to different all the time. I want to be respectful of your time, but I'd be remiss if I didn't ask, before I let you go, just one of, coming from Lansing, a favorite memory you have of Lansing.
I've been thinking a lot about the West Side Neighborhood Association, and I was thinking about, wondering if kids get dragged around like we used to get dragged around. We just sat in the back of the Sexton High School cafeteria for all those meetings. Sit and watch. We were just present for so much stuff. Meetings in our living room and other people's living rooms. Everybody smoked. One of them was proud to come through and empty the ashtrays. Oh gosh, I don't know. So many things. Went to Main Street School. She wasn't in school anymore. My favorite teacher, Ms. Green. I don't know if she's still out there. She was my 6th grade teacher. She changed my life. I loved her so much. And I don't know. My grandmother had consignment shops. Some people might remember Betty Ann's Consignment.
Okay, and which was where?
Oh, it was right across from where the ballpark is now.
Okay. Oh, great. Right downtown.
Right down the street from Gladstone's. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I've had some great experiences. I spent a lot of time in Lansing. A few years back, sort of at the end of my parents' lives, my partner and I were there for, really there a lot. And it was really, I have to say, I really loved, it was the most I had been back in Lansing since I left for college, and it was, I really loved being back there so much. We ate a lot of great meals at Dagwood's. I really love Dagwood's.
Yes, indeed. Dagwood's.
Also, did a lot of excellent biking. I really like biking around Lansing so much.
Yeah.
We still have just wonderful, wonderful friends there. I really love it there.
Well, we certainly love and are proud of you, and extend a permanent invitation anytime you want to come back to the theater community or just the community in general. Lisa, I just thank you for being so gracious with your time today, and for your amazing work with Fun Home and allowing us the privilege of producing it here in Lansing at Peppermint Creek, but also just your creative spirit and light in general is such a gift to the theater community. So thank you so much for taking the time today.
Oh my goodness, thank you for talking to me and for doing the show. It was really meant so much to me to have it produced in Lansing. And I'm just so moved and impressed that it's not surprised, but it's really, really great to see so much interesting, high quality theater happening in my hometown.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you. It's such an honor to talk to you. So find out more about Lisa at lisakron.org or Peppermint
With me
Creek.
of like 8 years ago or whenever I
Yeah.
last updated that website.
Yeah, or about Peppermint Creek at peppermintcreek.org. Again, thanks for joining us, Lisa. Thank you so much. It's so nice to talk to you.
Thank you.
Yeah, have a great day.
Thanks, you too.